Welcome, everybody, to our Sound for Video session. I'm really excited to bring in a special guest today, Mr. James Younger. James, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This is awesome.
We apologize. We had a little technical glitch here.
Yes.
These things happen, but because James is a pro, we got it sorted out in 5 minutes and 37 seconds. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Right. And of course, like I get in, and I'm like rearing to go. I've never used StreamYard before, so I've never tested it with my Apollo. And so, of course, it wouldn't give my Apollo and my mic and all that stuff permission. And I was just like, cool.
Yeah. We got it. We got it working now, though, so we're all good.
That's right.
Thanks so much to everyone who's joined us from all around the world, it appears, today. It's great to have you all here. Hope all of those in the Northern Hemisphere are staying cool. So all those in the Southern Hemisphere are staying warm. James, let's jump right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? First of all, how did you first get into sound? What drew you to it? And what keeps you passionate about it today?
Awesome. Yeah. So honestly, to start all the way back at the beginning, what really started it all is my dad. My dad is an unbelievable musician. He's the kind of musician that kind of makes other musicians mad because he can just hear a song that he's never heard in his entire life, pick up a guitar and start playing with it.
Wow.
Like playing right along with it. He's got this incredible ear and this incredible talent, which unfortunately I didn't quite get. I can, I'm decent. I'm a good musician, but man, his ear, that's something that I just wish I could have had. Yeah, man, it's just crazy. But I think, growing up with him and just having his influence, he was recording, when I was really young, he was recording himself on tape. And then when he, once that progressed, right early on, I remember he got Cakewalk, if you are familiar with Cakewalk, and this was like back when I was in high school. And I started playing the drums when I was like 5 years old, and I started playing the guitar when I was 12. And when he got Cakewalk, I decided, I was already playing a lot, and I was considering starting to play live music. And then I decided to kind of just go downstairs where he had his setup and everything and learn how to record in Cakewalk. And so I started recording myself, and I did that all through high school. It was super fun. And to make a long story short, I've gone through many like phases in my life. And one of my phases for about 7 years was I was an on-camera actor. And so I know I did that for 7 years. And like I would say towards the end of it, I started kind of like hearing a lot about voiceover. And I was like, well, I know how to record myself. I've been doing that for a long time. And I've been acting for 7 years or close to it at that point. And I was like, so I've got the acting chops and I know how to record. Let me give voiceover a try. And I did. And I ended up loving it. But I actually ended up loving the audio and the technical side of it more than even the voiceover side. As I started teaching that. And anyway, from then to now, that's how it kind of all happened, I would say.
Okay, good. Well, I found you actually on YouTube, believe it or not. That's
awesome.
You have a YouTube channel, and
yes, sir.
I was I don't even remember how I stumbled on it, but
probably because I commented on one of your videos and you commented back. Yeah, because it was an awesome video you had just released at the time when I commented, and it was about like you spent I think 10 weeks not taking any free gear.
Right.
And I was very interested in that because I'd watched your channel on and off for years back when I was trying to learn the video production side of things and lighting and all that good stuff. And then that video popped up one day and I was like, ooh, I need to watch this because I'm just like, I haven't had a YouTube channel for very long, 2.5 years ish. And I've been getting a lot of like free mics to review. And I was like, I really want to hear what Curtis has to say about this.
Yeah,
it was a great video.
It's a double-edged sword is the short version.
Yeah. It was such a great eye-opening video for me too.
Yeah, good. Let's talk about so when you say you do voiceover, there are probably some other, it sounds like there's some other things in sound you do in addition to that. Tell us the whole breadth. What is it you do in sound today? From voiceover, it sounds like you're a little bit more oriented on the tech side, but we moved the time of today's stream for a very specific reason that I was delighted to do because anyway, go ahead.
Thank you so much, by the way, for doing that. So as of right now, what I'm doing is, I consult voice actors on how to, one, just understand and set up their equipment, because a lot of voice actors that first get into it, most people, they don't know anything about audio. They've never done anything in their life to make them know anything about audio. So it's incredibly intimidating when they figure out like, oh, I've got to kind of be my own engineer nowadays. Like I've got to learn all this stuff, and like that's intimidating. And so I help them understand the equipment. I help them set it up. I help them, learn how to record in a DAW, and edit in the DAW. I also help them. This is a big part of it, which is and really the most important part: set up and acoustically treat their home studio. Like that's a huge part of it. So that's one thing I do. The other thing that I do part-time is I do live audio. I work for a church, and I do live audio for that church. And so far I do like I mix the live stream, because they always have a live stream for their service. So I'm back on the console mixing when they do that. And then sometimes I'm in monitor world where I will, adjust the in-ears for the musicians and the singers and all that kind of stuff. And one day I'm going to get to front of house. I just haven't got there yet. So that's one of my goals. And then the other thing I do kind of more so in my spare time now as a hobby, and it's just really fun. And, it might be a bigger part of my life later, who knows, but I do a little bit of music production still on my own.
Okay.
So that's about the extent of it. Yeah.
Cool. I did see there, I think one of the episodes on your YouTube channel that I saw that intrigued me was you did I think you called it a sound checkup on specifically Rick Beato.
Audio checkup. Yeah.
Audio checkup. That's it.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. I know, Gerald Undone did a studio tour of Rick Beato's studio, and so I always wondered how he did his sound, because it was the music is really good, and the dialogue it's okay. I mean, like he's got a really nice treated space, but that was a super interesting look into what's behind the scenes there. How is he achieving this? What can we learn from it? Just so for those that don't know, could you tell what is Rick using to record his voice?
Yeah. And thank Gerald Undone for doing that studio tour, because that was the reason when I saw he was doing that, I was like, perfect timing, perfect opportunity. I'm just going to go watch Gerald's video, find out what Rick's doing on the back end, and then just go for it. Because I never knew either. I always wondered myself. Come to find out, Rick's not even using like a standard shotgun or large diaphragm condenser mic. He's just using the top small mics on your Zoom H4-6, which is what he's using. I have the 4, but that's all he's using.
Yeah.
And he'll use a lav when he's doing like interviews and stuff. But that's most of the time when he's doing his talking head videos, it's just the top mics on the Zoom.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. I was like, wow, I did not expect that.
I did not either. But why is he able to pull that off in your estimation?
I mean, just the fact that his room is so darn treated. Yeah. I mean, his room is heavily, heavily treated. I said in the video, because I learned it in Gerald's video, Rick was talking about his whole space, and he was saying that like most of the walls in there, it's just like a massive acoustic panel basically. And I'm like, well, there you go. That's, and the other thing I also say in the video is like, even though his room is heavily treated, you're still fighting the room sound. You're still going to fight that roomy sound when the mic's that far away from you.
Yep.
It's way better for him than it would be for a lot of people.
Exactly. I mean, he's still contending with I think they're wood floors or some sort of hard surface. He's got a window into the control room.
Like two of them, two gigantic ones. Yeah.
Yep. So, it was really, really super interesting. So, okay, back to voiceover. Let's talk about voiceover. For those that are, and I actually, I have a confession to make. So I've done some, believe it or not, professional voiceover myself.
I saw you say something in a video, and it was recently, and you were talking about doing some VO, and I was like, oh,
yeah, a little bit. Did some directed sessions. I've done some solo sessions. So I did some longer form content, which was just recorded solo. It was some years ago. And then more recently, some ads I voiced, and all of those sessions were actually directed sessions. But anyway, I have a lot of questions for you, because I've now I have a lot of questions because I've experienced it a little bit.
Yes.
But for those that are first starting, or just like maybe interested in getting into voiceover, what are kind of the big things that they need to consider when it comes to voiceover as a profession?
Right.
Is it all like, are there people just showing up at your door and wanting your autograph all day long, or what does it
Yes.
look like?
That you just, I mean, honestly, we don't have to have any more of a conversation. You just told everyone what it is. Anyway, I'm just kidding. So no, unfortunately that doesn't happen. It would be nice if it did. But yeah, if you're looking at voiceover as a profession, and I always make this distinction, not as a hobby. If you find it fun and you just enjoy doing it, that is a different world. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do something just because it's fun. But if you're looking at it like, I want to make this a career, I want this to pay and hopefully pay my bills, and this is all I need to do, like I don't have to work a part-time job, things like that. The very, very first thing you need to do is you need to get in a class somewhere, get in some kind of voiceover class that focuses on the acting side of voiceover, which, I mean, voiceover, I don't, even though I say that term a lot because you hear it all the time, I really like to say voice acting, because it isn't just voiceover, it is acting, because, whether you're on camera or doing voiceover, it really is the same thing, minus, with on camera stuff, you have a camera in front of you to be able to convey emotions with your face, with your body. In voiceover, you don't get that luxury. Like, you have to convey everything just with your voice. And that can be a lot more challenging at times, like you really, really got to know, you have to have acting chops. And so when people are like, I want to get into voiceover, well, the first thing you need to do is you need to go take some acting classes. And realistically, if you wanted to not take a voiceover class, if you wanted to just take an acting class, that'd be totally fine too. Because at the end of the day, it's just acting. So like, but I would still recommend you go and do a voiceover specific class for sure. And that way, one, you get the most important part, which is like, you got to be able to act. Two, you're going to learn things about voiceover that will open your eyes a lot more. And you're going to realize either, yes, this sounds like a ton of fun, and I definitely want to dive deeper into this world, or you're going to find out, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And I don't, you know what I mean? I don't need to waste the money on this to find out later, oh, I didn't actually want to do this, So I always tell people, do that first, because you don't want to waste the money and you don't want to waste your time. So like, see if you really will enjoy it, get into a class, learn everything you can in that class about it. But yeah, once you find out that this is something that you legit want to do, and you start taking some classes, you get that acting under your belt, you start to really feel good about it. You're going to start breaking down scripts and figuring out what casting wants via specs. So, they might say, we want this to be energetic, conversational. And then it might be, no, we want this to be professional. And there's a bunch of different things they may tell you, and you need to know what you need to do to get there and to convey what they're wanting. So, and of course you learn all that in classes, in good classes with good people and good studios. But once you do all of that, even though my job is the audio side of things and like the technical side, that's when I tell people, okay, now that you've done all of that, you've laid the foundation, you want to do this, you got some acting under your belt, all that good stuff. That's when you worry about the tech. That's when you worry about it. Okay. Yeah. Because a lot of people put the cart before the horse. They start worrying about microphones, interfaces, their home studio. They spend all this money and then they go, oh, actually voiceover isn't what I thought. And they spend all that money. Yeah.
Wrong side, or wrong direction. So
exactly.
Speaking of gear, you have this beautiful mic in front of you. Tell us about that. What are you using today?
So this is the Rode NT1 5th generation. So I love Rode as a company, but I love the Rode NT1, the black version, it was like the 4th gen version. Yeah, I used that forever. And I've praised that mic in so many of my videos. I mean, that mic, it's a relatively flat response microphone. It doesn't have any hyped frequencies, which I prefer. And especially like, I like to differentiate my opinion versus what the industry standards are. Because, you need to know what the industry standards are and be wary of people's opinions, because it could get you in trouble. But my opinion is, to me, flat response microphones I prefer all day in voiceover versus ultra hyped microphones. Like, for example, the Sennheiser 416. That is one of the most famous microphones in voiceover. It's used a lot in film and a bunch of other stuff. But like for voiceover, it's one of the legendary mics. When I first started out and my ears weren't as trained, I like the 416. I was like, oh, that's cool. But then as my ears get more and more trained, and not to knock the 416, but I get a little less, I don't like it as much because I'm like, man, that is a harsh sounding microphone. Like that kind of hurts when you have to listen to it for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's great for like promo work and stuff, but I love the Rode NT1 because I have yet to hear it sound bad on anyone's voice. And I'm sure there's someone out there that it wouldn't fit perfect on, but it's just one of those microphones that it doesn't cost. I mean, like what is it? $250 or something like that,
Like so,
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so incredibly affordable. However, it sounds like an expensive microphone. Like it just sounds fantastic. So, you know, you're not overspending. It's most likely going to sound great on your voice regardless. I mean, as long as you properly treat your space. And it just doesn't break the bank, and you can get started with this, and not just get started with this. You could use this for the rest of your career and be okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I love this mic. It's just, and the 5th generation versus the 4th, they came out with this one. And with this one, you can use it via XLR or you can use it via USB. So I always tell the people that are just starting out, that are like, all right, I'm looking into equipment. I'm like, okay, if you're just starting out and you don't want to break the bank, just buy the Rode NT1 because you can use it in its USB version and not even worry about an interface for the first however long. And then one day, if you're like, okay, I really do want to do this, this is great, I just got an agent or whatever the case may be, go ahead and get yourself an interface, and you don't have to buy a new mic.
Yeah.
Your mic works with it. You know what I mean?
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great mic.
It's good. I in fact, I don't know if I can get it in the frame here. No, it's not gonna make it. That's my NT1 4th generation. It's my daily mic for my
there you go.
For my day job. And yeah, the 5th gen is really great too. Okay, you touched on some things while you were talking about that NT1. Yes. You said as long as your room is treated.
Right.
Okay,
and that's key.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
We have to. Yes. This is a can of worms, man, because you know, like this is what I probably spend most of my time on as a consultant and you know, just helping voice actors, because you know, one of the things that I'm sure you know very, very well is in the industry, even not just as a voice actor, but as a content creator, many other things, you're pushed like you need to have expensive gear to sound good. And it's like, no, you don't, you know, and people will fall for it because it's one of those hypey things, you know, and it sounds cool or whatever. And you can get people to think they need to spend a lot of money, whatever it is, but you don't, because what I always tell people, and I know, you know, today's technology is a little bit more advanced than it used to be a couple of years back, but I look at it like lighting for photography or videography. If you have bad lighting, you're not going to get a good photo unless you were going for something specifically with a darker, you know, I don't know. But normally, if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to lighting a shot or a person or whatever it is that you're shooting, you're probably not going to get a good photo. And the same goes with acoustics for audio. It does not matter what microphone you buy. It doesn't matter if it's a $3,000 microphone like the Neumann U87, that it's like one of the most famous mics for VO and other stuff. It's going to sound horrible in an untreated space. And that's it. That's all there is to it. If you know, and people think like, oh, it's the mic. And I'm like, to get even more technical, your audio might even sound worse on a $3,000 microphone versus a $200 mic in an untreated space, because that mic is going to be more sensitive.
Yeah.
And it's going to pick up more in that untreated space, which will likely make you sound something like this, and probably other worse ways too. And, you know, that's the whole trick. The whole trick is like, I always tell people, don't worry about the mic as much. I think I heard, you know, Mike Delgadio.
Yeah.
Right. Love that dude.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure he said this. If he was not the one, I hope somebody can comment below and tell me if they know who said this. But I heard either him or someone say, if I had $1,000 budget, I would spend 200 of that on a microphone and 800 of that on acoustically treating my space. And I was like, I never need to say anything else. That's perfect. You know, and it's true. It's like, I have a whole video on my channel that I think personally, I think it's the most important video on my channel. And it says phone doesn't work, and a little clickbaity, but not really, because once you get in, you realize why it doesn't work. And it's just, if you know, we're getting a little word. Yeah, can of worms. This is what I mean.
Okay, so All right. So, okay, here's a question I've heard a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Can't I just get one of those little box things that go over the microphone? No, but I mean like it's got padding
Yeah.
foam in the back. Is like makes a box around it, and I just get up really close to my microphone and I can do my voiceover. What's the
Right.
problem there? Why does that not work?
So technically, if you really, 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 really know what you're doing, you could probably like, work your way out of it sounding bad potentially. But at the end of the day, most of the like people that really, really, really know what they're doing wouldn't even use something like that. So it's kind of defeats the purpose. But if you don't know what you're doing, what happens when you surround your microphone with, let's say, the eyeball or any other contraption that's like that surrounds a mic? The easiest way to explain it, and I don't even really like, there's other people out there that could really get into the nitty gritty with what it's doing. But the easy way to explain it is it's almost like suffocating your microphone. Your microphone needs room to breathe. And if you suffocate it like that, it will either make your audio sound muffled, boomy, or maybe other things, or maybe a combination of all of that. And I even have a video on my channel about the chaotic eyeball, and it says, "This ruins your audio. Don't use it, voice actors." And the whole video I show with the TLM 103, this is what your audio sounds like without it, and this is what your audio sounds like with it. And I do it purposefully. And I've had so many comments that, they didn't understand what I was doing in the video. And I show in the video, I'm like, the reason I'm taking this eyeball and putting it over a microphone in an already totally acoustically treated environment like my closet is to show you what the eyeball is doing to the audio. Because in all the other videos out there, they're in these incredibly awful spaces that no one would choose to record in anyway, like, a really reflective bathroom or something like that. And they throw the eyeball on and everybody's like, "Oh, listen to that difference. Oh my gosh," and it's a bit of trickery, because it's such a drastic change. They don't even realize the negative that's happening to the audio because the reflections are all of a sudden so diminished.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I need to go into a completely treated space to show people what is really happening to the audio. And what you find out is, in my particular case, in my closet with the TLM 103, it muffles the microphone. It takes the clarity of that mic down. And, I always tell people, if you give the engineer more work on the other end that you're sending your audio off to, there's less of a chance that they're potentially going to work with you in the future. And that may not happen. Maybe they don't even care, but you just don't want to be in that position where if you keep sending audio that sounds muffled or that's problematic, eventually that engineer is going to be like, hey, whoever they need to talk to, whether it's the client, the agent, or whoever, they're going to be like, can we choose another talent with a better sound to go with? Because, they have a bunch to choose from. So you don't want to put yourself in that position. So yeah, I say don't use those.
Okay. All right. And that goes for the foam panels that people glue up on their walls or Velcro up on their walls, or.
Yeah, the foam panels are a different problem. The foam panels, they won't make your audio necessarily sound muffled like the chaotic eyeball will, or like other things like that will. But the problem with the foam is the way acoustic treatment works is, as long as it's the right material, right? A very good material to use as acoustic treatment. The thicker the material, the lower the frequencies it will attenuate and it will fix. The thinner the material, it will only be able to attenuate the higher frequencies. And so when you get like 1 to 2 inch thick Amazon foam, for example, and you put it on every bare surface, sorry about that, Pop, you put it on every bare surface in your space, you're still going to sound like this. That's the problem. You're still going to sound like you're in a cardboard box or something like that. And it's because that foam is taking care of the high frequencies, but the foam has done nothing to the mid highs, the mids, or the lows. And so all of those reflections are still swimming around your space and reflecting back into the microphone. And so you're going to need to use something like acoustic panels or acoustic blankets, or like I say in my video, a combination. Like if you're going to go with foam, first off, you need to go with 4-inch thick foam if you're ever going to want to get any kind of good results out of it. But even that by itself isn't going to be enough. You're going to need to pair it with clothes, foam, blankets, cushion, pillows, things like that. And you're going to need to go crazy, And then the other thing is, like, you have to know where to place this stuff. So it can get complicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. And we could actually probably do an entire live stream on this topic itself.
Absolutely.
But
No.
so let's talk about. So we talked about microphone. You think that and I completely agree. Incidentally, Rode NT1, fantastic starting point.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Acoustic treatment. We know there's definitely some things there. But
Yes.
what other things, like what's the difference if I get a Rode NT1 fifth generation and connect it to my computer using USB versus an audio interface? What's an audio interface going to get me other than having to lay out, a chunk of cash?
So if you'd asked me this question like 3 or 4 years ago, my answer would be different. But because you're asking me now in 2024,
Okay.
a lot of things have progressed, which is nice.
Yeah.
Technology is progressing at an alarming rate.
Mhm.
So really to answer this first in an incredibly broken down, simplified way, the industry, believe it or not, regardless of how great this Rode NT1 5th gen is and how in literally almost no one, I don't know anyone out there unless the literal greatest ears on planet Earth that would be able to tell the difference between using this mic in a USB or XLR. You know what I mean? Like if you
Mhm.
send an A and a B, 99% of people would be really hard pressed to be able to tell the difference.
Yep.
But that's not every USB mic. That's still a very small amount of USB microphones,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the easiest way to explain this would be the industry, the voiceover industry still views USB microphones as unprofessional. And that's honestly that, like, nowadays in 2024, that's my argument to people, because I'm like, I don't even need to get into any of the technical stuff because it doesn't apply nearly as much as it used to just a few years ago. But the industry still views USB microphones as, oh, you're not taking voiceover seriously, regardless of whether you are or not.
Right.
It's
Right.
just the way it is.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was interesting too. I do have a Neumann U87. I have a
Nice.
Rode NT1. I actually prefer the sound of my voice on the NT1 over the
I've
Neumann.
heard so many people say that.
It just, I mean,
Yeah. And you
but
know what? One day I'll have a U87, but I don't need one. I just want
yeah,
one.
we did have no, exactly. Same here.
Yeah.
Like I didn't need it, but I actually, honestly, the reason I got it was as a reference microphone when I'm reviewing other large diaphragm condenser microphones,
That would
because
be why I would get it.
it's because so many people, it's a industry, it's so well
Yeah,
known in the industry. So
it
many
is.
people know.
And it is an industry
It's,
standard in
yeah.
multiple. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, music, voiceover,
NVO.
and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So when
Yeah.
I talked last year, we had Lily Wexu on, who is a voiceover actor as well,
Okay.
and she taught. She actually uses a Neumann U87. I asked her about it, and she said, "Curtis, the truth is, just because in the voiceover industry, that's they're looking for stuff like that. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
I could get away with a much less expensive microphone, but
Dude.
the reality is
Oh,
they're looking for it."
I'm so glad that she said that, because that's what I say to people. And I've said it in a few of my videos on my channel. Because people will ask me, they're like, well, then why do studios and other voice actors use U87s or Sennheiser 416s or TLM 103s? And I'm like, no joke. It sounds crazy, but it's literally because it carries the name.
Mhm.
It carries the name. And it
Yeah.
just, like, whether it's agents or clients or engineers or, less engineers, but mostly like agents, clients, and other people, if they hear that you are voicing, or they hear that you have in your home studio as a voice actor, oh, I have the U87, oh, I have the 103, oh, I have the 416, immediately a trigger goes off in their brain that, oh, they take this seriously, they're professional,
Mhm.
even though
Yeah.
that may not be the truth. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? But
Exactly. It
it
could be
makes
that
them
they
think
just
it.
they got a lot of cash lying around in
Yes.
their
Yes, they got a lot of money, unlike
um,
the rest of us.
um, one of the things that I experienced when I was doing the recent voiceover work is breathing is a huge thing.
Oh,
Oh, and I have some serious problems when it comes to breathing, but when it comes to voiceover and breathing, I
I
can
get it.
breathe and I'm still alive, but but the performance is a little bit interesting. So I wanted to talk to you
Yeah,
about two things that are kind of related. There's obviously technique,
yeah,
and the breathing probably goes back to the acting and the voice acting training.
yeah.
But also, let me just call something out. You have your microphone in a unique position that
Right.
most of us that produce video don't typically use that position. Tell us
Right.
about positioning mics first, and then let's get a little bit more into technique.
Totally. And I think I've already kind of screwed myself here because there's been a couple times now where I've popped the microphone, and normally in like all my videos, I never have any issues, but here I'm just being really animated and it's happening. And which would be
This is
maybe
real.
one of the, yeah, this is real. This is like, I don't get 2 takes here. So, but I do this simply because I just don't like pop filters, and not even necessarily because they have the chance of maybe coloring the audio depending on how you use it, which one you're using, but more so just because I don't like it in my face. I just don't like it in my face. And I know a lot of voice actors, they don't like it in their face either, especially because like if you're in your booth or wherever your space is, you're reading copy in front of you. If you got this big, pop filter in your face, it could get in your way and it can get frustrating. And I've known plenty of voice actors, including myself early on. I use my hands a lot.
Yeah.
And if you're getting into the script, you're probably going to be using your hands a lot. And it helps you get into emotions and really get into the script and really deliver the copy the way that you need to. And dude, myself, including so many others, constantly hitting that pop filter, just hitting it, smacking it, not meaning to. So I like to just get it out of the way. And if you just take the microphone and you just have it a little bit above yourself and a little bit angled off to the side, you really don't need a pop filter. Because if I'm sorry guys, if I'm right in front of it and I say Peter Piper, I'm immediately popping that mic. But if I'm off, I guess a little off axis, and I'm like focusing straight forward, Peter Piper picked a peck of, I'm never popping the mic. Unless I'm doing what I did earlier and I'm accidentally turning to it. But, so many voice actors' eyes light up when they either see the video on my channel or I tell them in a private consultation, like, oh, you don't have to use that pop filter if you don't want to. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you can get rid of it. And they're like, oh, thank God. But, you do have to be careful if you get rid of the pop filter, as you've seen now with me here. If you're getting really animated, you could absolutely throw one up because I don't know. Do you know James Arnold Taylor?
I don't know.
So he's like a pretty big voice actor. If you're in the voiceover industry, you might know who he is. He's done quite a few things. And even though he's like one of the voice actors in the industry that knows a ton about the audio and tech side and even the video stuff. And it's very like, he has really good production quality. He knows how to mix stuff. Like he's just one of those voice actors that understands that side and enjoys it, And because of that, he's really, really good at mic placement and all this stuff, but he still uses a pop filter. And I think it's because he does a lot of animation and video game work, and he is really animated in that booth. So I think it's like it's a safeguard because he knows that he's probably going to be moving and he might accidentally pop it. And, I kind of call it a glorified spit guard because there's a lot of studios out there that literally use pop, even though they set it for the voice actor. And let's say the voice actor is a really, really like professional, like they've done this forever and they know how to stay in position and not pop the mic. Even still, studios will use pop filters because they have maybe like 5 to 10 to maybe more people coming in and out of there a day, and they don't want them spitting all over their expensive microphone. And the pop filter kind of helps shield it against that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some value there still.
There's some value, absolutely. And if you want to use a pop filter, by all means, use it. People watch my video and they get all upset. They're like, I love a pop filter. I'm like, well, you didn't make it to the end of the video, because at the end of the video, I'm like, if you want to use one, it's totally fine. Yeah.
And I would say that I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to kind of test drive a few to see because they sound like a metal filter versus the kind of the fabric filters.
Yeah.
And obviously foam, huge difference there. Foam definitely cuts into those higher frequencies, but it's totally fine to test drive them and see what works.
And you should. Yeah, you should. If you're like, I'm going to use pop filters just because maybe you like them or maybe you need it as a safeguard or whatever the case may be, I agree with you 100%. Go out there and test a few and see which ones you like the most and see which one sounds the best,
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed. So the part of the reason then, I don't know that you said this necessarily explicitly, but my guess is that the part of the reason you suspend it from above is that gives you more freedom of expression with your hands.
That is part of it.
Okay.
That's part of it for sure. Gives me more freedom to move around. But then also, and I mean, I don't think it's, that's the thing about like audio and a lot of things. There is no, sometimes there's concrete things that you can, a guideline that you can go by that's almost always true. But in a lot of cases, most things aren't always true. Depends on the person, situation. And I know with a lot of people, they talk about if I angle the mic up at me, you get a little bit more of a nasal sound. You can get more mouth noise and stuff like that that you don't want to introduce. So that's another reason that I like to suspend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Good. That's a lesson for maybe me, actually.
No, that's the thing. I know, and that's why when I was saying it, I was like, well, crap.
No, it actually does make a difference. I actually can hear a difference. Obviously, for a live stream, I typically, here's where I make a calculated, a decision. Like, okay, I want something a little bit lower profile.
Because realistically, I don't hear anything wrong with really anybody that I watch that positions the mic like you do. It's just personal preference.
Yeah, I actually can hear a difference sometimes on my voice. Yeah. So I definitely prefer a boomed mic if I can do that. I've also tell us about this. So I've noticed, and I have heard of some that teach voice acting and voiceover, kind of the technical elements of it.
Yeah.
Positioning the microphone relative to the mouth can make a huge difference as well. So, for example, some people have a very nasally kind of character to their voice.
You do? You think you do?
A little bit. I think I've got a little bit of a kind of Kermit the Frog thing going.
I guess I could kind of, if I really listen here, but I've heard so many more drastically different, that it's like, I never thought that, but yeah.
But what I'm saying is that when you, just the kind of the vertical positioning of the microphone capsule can make a huge difference too, in terms of sibilance, in terms of.
That's true.
Kind of the nasally character of voices.
Yeah.
So it almost seems to me like positioning the mic could be kind of a person-to-person thing. Like it may depend on the voice.
100%. That's actually what I was going to say. Is this is actually one of the aspects that I haven't played around that much with, which is other than placing, like we just talked about, a little bit off to the side, a little bit down, making sure it's in focus with the mouth. There's a lot of people that, let's just go with shotgun microphone, for example. I know a lot of people, or not people personally, but I've heard of people like more famous voice actors and things like that will point their shotgun mic towards their chest more so. And I don't even remember why they said, but they had a reason, and it probably fit along the same lines of what you're talking about. For their voice, for them specifically, it just sounded better pointing at their chest or their chin. I know typically I know most people don't typically want to point to their nose, but it might work for some people. I don't know. Yeah.
Yep.
It can drastically change. It just depends. Yeah.
Yeah, just a good example of how, there are not hard and fast rules. I mean, there are guidelines where you probably want to start, but you got to kind of experiment voice to voice.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's a question as well. So the gear available to us today at the prices that they're available to us today are, for those that experienced all of this whole world 10, 15 years ago, it is mind-blowing.
It is.
And you can get channel strips that some really nice channel strips that sound fantastic. What's your take on processing the recording versus just coming in raw and then handling it in post?
So, do you mean processing on the front end?
Yeah, so like using a channel strip with a compressor and a de-esser and maybe a noise gate or any of that stuff.
So I know that this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but as like I said before, and as I always do, I go with industry standards, forgo my opinion. You want to make sure you're meeting these standards because it's only going to give you a higher chance of getting with an agent and booking jobs and stuff like that. And one of those standards is do not process your audio, and especially don't process your audio on the front end, because I made an analogy in one of my, I think, latest videos, and it goes, let's say you're baking a cake. Somebody tells you, hey, bake me strawberry shortcake. You get done baking it, and right as you're pulling it out of the oven, they come in and they say, hey, actually, change of plans. Can you actually turn that into and I can't off the top of my head think of an opposite cake, but just think of an opposite cake, right? You'd be like, no, because I just baked it. There's literally no way to undo it. I would have to start over.
Yeah.
that is exactly what will happen to you, and also what will happen if you send that audio to the engineer on the other end. Because if you're compressing it on the front end, de-essing it on the front end, EQing it on the front end, denoising it, declicking it, whatever you're doing, it's printed that way. You can't undo it. Once it's done, it's done. And so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the podcasts I listened to explained it like this. And I was like, oh, that is the best way to explain it. And it is, imagine you're the engineer that has to work on the audio from the voice actor. And imagine you're in the cutting room with producers, with the client for the, product, and the client's asking you, hey, can you make that sound more like this? And you're sitting there sweating up a storm because you're like, actually, I can't, because the voice actor sent it to me already sounding heavily processed. So it would be incredibly complicated and like working a puzzle to try to unprocess it and reprocess it, which really wouldn't be unprocessing it. You're just adding processing on top of processing, which gets even more in the mud. Yeah, you're basically putting them in an almost impossible situation. And then that will reflect badly on them in the moment, because then they're under that stress, and it's just, you don't want to do that to them. Yeah. It's not going to work out well for you either as a voice actor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say I've gone to my acting and my voiceover classes. I've got my Rode NT1. Cool. I've got an audio interface. How do I get not my next job? How do I get my first job?
Okay. First job. I honestly, there's a couple of avenues you could take. The one I personally recommend taking is, have you ever heard of pay-to-play sites? I'm sorry, I asked you right as you're taking a drink.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So for anybody that doesn't know what a pay-to-play site is, let me first talk about what would happen if you as a voice actor got an agent, because that's one of your main goals, is to get with an agent. The agent has basically their finger on the pulse of all these jobs that are coming in, and they will send these jobs out to their talent that they think fits the specs of that job, or that they think would do a really good job. So they send that audition out. You as a voice actor get the audition, and you go, oh, cool. You read the directions, you record your audition, you send it off to that agent. Then that agent submits it to the client or to the casting director, and they go through all of those submissions and find which voice actor they like the most, who's going to book it. A pay-to-play site is exactly that, but you just cut the agent out of the equation. You are essentially your own agent on a pay-to-play site, because when you sign up on a pay-to-play site, it's called pay-to-play because you have to pay a fee, a yearly fee or a monthly fee, to be on that site and to get that site to send you auditions. But once you get the audition, you literally just record the audition and you upload it to the site. And then that client can sit there on that site on the back end and see, oh, I've got 100 people that have auditioned for my job. And then they can go through, or if they've hired a casting director, the casting director will go through and sift through and find the ones that fit the spec the most. And so I would recommend joining a pay-to-play site first. And the reason I say that is a bit of a personal reason, because some people would advise against it, because pay-to-play sites can be kind of sketchy, and you really got to be careful, because pay-to-play sites in a lot of cases are a race to the bottom, unfortunately, because and even some pay-to-play sites started out really good with really good intentions, where they were like, we're going to pay voice actors a fair rate. And then for whatever reason, after a couple months, it just starts to dive, and they start paying voice actors way less than they are worth. And it just drives the industry down. So you do have to be careful and not take jobs that aren't paying enough. But that's a whole nother conversation, obviously. But the reason that I say it's a personal thing for me is when I first started voice acting, I joined a pay-to-play site. And I don't even really want to name the site, because I don't want to give, a push to any site or not. If you want to learn more about pay-to-plays, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch a whole podcast I did with one of my previous students that does pay-to-play sites mainly. He's got agents too, but he knows a lot about them. But I joined a pay-to-play, and this is before I ever got with an agent. And it got me into the routine of auditioning. So like I was able to audition multiple times a day. And in the beginning, honestly, I didn't even care if I fit the specs that well, because I looked at it like, experience. I'm trying to get in the routine of auditioning and, get in the routine of like breaking down a script properly, or thinking I did, hoping I did, getting into the booth, recording the audio, hopefully the right way, which thank God I knew how, getting out, submitting that, and just seeing where, like, okay, maybe I didn't get that job because I did it this way. It's a guessing game because you never get feedback. You get feedback like maybe 0.001% of the time.
Right.
So you have to kind of do a guess game. And that's also why it's good to have coaches, because they will give you third-party feedback in a way that you can't hear yourself, which is great. But me getting into that routine and going through and auditioning day in and day out helped kind of get me out of, it kind of helped get my nerves under control a little bit. Not fully, because really the way to get nerves under control, I say, is to go to a live class with a bunch of other voice actors and cycle them out into the booth or in the middle of the room and say, all right, you're gonna audition for this in front of all of us. That's the best way. Because I did want to actually talk to you about the breathing, because I think that's really important because of a problem I used to have. Sounds like you may have had the same problem. Mm-hmm. But I say on this topic, join a pay-to-play for, I don't know, man, a month to 6 months, just to feel yourself out and get into the routine of auditioning. And like I said, be careful. Don't do jobs that aren't worth it. However, on the same end of the spectrum, you're just starting out, and sometimes you do just need experience and you do just need work, right? And so I've heard a lot of voice actor or voiceover coaches say this, and I tend to agree for the most part. It's okay to do free work in the beginning and work that doesn't pay very much in the beginning, but you have to have a hard cutoff. Like whether it's 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, you have to get to a point where you go, I've paid my dues. I've done all the free stuff I need to. I've got the experience that I needed from this. And now I need to know that I'm worth way more than a lot of this.
Yeah. And you frankly might need a coach or somebody that can kind of help you make that decision. Because
100%.
When you're getting started, there's always the voice in your head of, I don't really feel really confident yet,
Yes.
Yeah.
And you may deal with that voice for the rest of your life. And you need a coach to get it out of your head.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about breathing. Tell me what you know about breathing.
Okay. So I'm just going to go with my personal experience because it was such a problem for me when I first started voice acting. So I first started voice acting, joined a class. It was a 3-month intensive. So it was a 3-month long class. You met once a week for 3 months. And the good thing about this class was, you would learn all about voiceover in the first, I want to say that class might've been 2 hours long or something like that. Maybe it was 3 hours, but anyway, the first hour or two, you would learn about voiceover in many different ways, many different aspects. But for that last hour, and sometimes even in the first and second hour, but most of the time during that last hour, everyone in the room would have to get up, go into the booth in front of everyone. And, they had speakers and they had the whole setup so you could hear what the person in the booth was doing and saying and all that kind of stuff. So you had to get up in front of all of these people and do it. You had to get up and do it. And that was like, it's one of those things where you're like, either you're going to be like nervous and petrified, or you're like, oh, this would be fine, until you step in the booth and get in front of that microphone. When you step in front of that microphone, something happens for most people, not all, but most people. Something happens, your brain clicks on and you go into performance mode, and you go into like your nerves go crazy and you're just incredibly nervous. And so what happened to me personally is I could not catch my breath. So I like delivering lines was almost impossible for the first like month or two of class because I just couldn't get my nerves under control. And then the other thing that sucked was, some people, when they get really nervous, they either produce more saliva, which can cause more mouth noise, or they do like me and it dries their mouth up, which also produces more mouth noise. So you can't get away from it either way, which is so stupid. But so yeah, I was dealing with not being able to breathe through the reeds. And then also just like insane mouth noise because I was like, my mouth was drying out and I was super nervous. But the good news is this, I can say this for sure, for me anyway. And I think I would probably be the case for most people. It's probably going to be different for everyone in a different time range. But after I was in that class for a good month, the nerves started to go down a little bit. And then after I was in it for the second month, the nerves were down even more. So that's one of the other benefits of joining a class. Yeah, you learn a lot and that's great. But the biggest thing that you can learn and the biggest experience you can gain is having to do this stuff in front of people. Because the thing is, you don't want to stay in an isolated shell. Because I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm a very introverted person, and I don't like doing things in front of people, which is crazy because I chose to be an on-camera actor for 7 years, and I used to play live music all around where I live for like 2 years. And so you're like, okay, shut up, James. you are extroverted, but I'm really not. I just enjoy those things, and I just say, screw it, I'll make it happen. But you have the experience now, so that you're not staying in your isolated shell. And then let's say you book a job, and let's say you have to go into a live directed session. Woo! It's a totally different ball game. And you want to be as prepared as you can. And joining a class where you have to get up in front of everyone and do reads and workouts and all that stuff, that is going to be so beneficial. Yeah.
So this last job that I did was it was a directed session. It was my first directed session, a series of sessions. And fortunately it was a very short, it was basically an ad. And it was, in the end, it was super helpful. It's a person I'd worked with who was directing, so I knew them already. So I didn't feel as much of the nerves, but what was really helpful for me in that directed session in particular is in essence, he acted as a coach where he could tell me, okay, inflection wise, I need you to do this. There's a kind of, this is how we want the cadence of this line to go. This is what we want the inflection to do at the end. Is it up or is it down? Is it confidence? Is it, there's a lot of little nuances there that I think.
So many.
Yeah. And when it comes to when people start talking about, voiceover's going away, AI is taking over, I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe at the low end, yes. Low end, definitely. High end, I don't see it. Maybe someday. I don't know. But I would say that there were some really, those directed sessions are super intense and super helpful, actually. Too.
Yes. I will say, I took that class at that studio. And long story short, I ended up actually working at that studio and teaching classes at that studio for voice actors and setting up, voice actors home studios that would come through the studio. And luckily enough, one of the owners of the studio would actually let me sit in on his sessions. And so I would sit there and I would wear headphones outside the booth and listen to the entire session while he was in the booth doing the job. And it was so interesting because just like you were saying, there are so many little tiny things that you can do to change a delivery, to change a word, to change a read, to change so many things. And the gamble that you take when you do a live session is you're either going to do a live session with someone that literally either is maybe a voiceover coach or could be a voiceover coach because they're just really good at talking to people and like describing what they're trying to get out of you, and they will pull it out of you, which is awesome. But then sometimes you do a session with people that don't know the vocabulary, they don't know how to pull things out of people, and they're saying the most, I don't know, the most generic things to try to get something out of you, and you're just in your head, you're freaking out because you're like, I don't know what they want. And and it's so hard to like figure out what they want most of the time, because I've heard so many coaches say, they're like, in a lot of cases, you have to give them what did they say? It's not give them what they want, or it's give them what they probably want, but don't know they want. It's a weird thing that you've got to, and again, this is another reason why it's great to take classes, because you never know what situation you're going to be in. It could be one directed session like yours, where it's a dude that really knows what he's doing, or a woman that really knows what she's doing, and they really know how to pull stuff out of people really well. They know how to articulate what they're wanting. And then sometimes you don't get that. And you've got to be able to navigate that entire situation,
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
Can be tricky. Do you have a couple minutes? I know we got a little bit of a late start. Do you have a couple minutes for some questions submitted
absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Here's one really quickly here from Thomas. Let's say you do a take, but it sounds too nasal. How often do you change your mic placement first and give the same delivery, or change the delivery with the same setup? What's your strategy?
Okay. That one's tough just because if you're doing, because I think you also said that you had done sessions where it's solo by yourself, you record it by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are much, much easier. So to kind of answer your question, if you're in that scenario, you can do whatever you want, because you're by yourself, you're not being directed. So if you're like, I'm not getting what I want, go to town, do whatever you want, because you're not on a time crunch in the sense that you're live and they're needing it from you then. But maybe the job's due in a couple hours or something like that. Then that's your time crunch. But that's much more doable. When you're in a live directed session, if they're hearing issues with your audio in any kind of way, the good news is this: most of the time, you're going to be dealing with people, as long as the issue isn't like outrageous. If the issue is outrageous and it's obvious that you haven't taken the time to do your due diligence and treat your space right and really understand mic placement and mic technique and all that good stuff, as long as it's not like something that is your fault for sure. If it's just like, stuff happens. Oh, move that mic a little bit this way or that way. The good news is normally you're going to be working where there's an engineer on the other end. And that engineer is going to absolutely be able to pipe in and be like, hey, could you maybe move that mic a little bit to the left? And they will literally walk you through what they want you to do. So you don't have to worry too much about that. And I get it. Trust me, I get it to the person that asked that. I totally understand, because as voice actors, especially when you're new, you've got about 1 billion questions and 1 billion thoughts going through your head thinking, oh, I need to do this. Oh no, what if this happens? Oh no, what if this happens? And it can really mess with you, but give yourself a little bit of grace, let yourself go a little bit, because 99.9999999% of the time, it's not going to be a problem. They're just going to say, hey, let's try this. And then you're just going to try it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, they're going to say, okay, now let's try this. And you're okay.
At that point, you're a team. You're working together to get the result.
So, because the other thing you have to realize, and I think I heard Mike Delgadio say this, and it's just so great. When you're doing a session with someone, they are on your side. They're on your team. They want to get good out of you. Trust me, they're not against you. I promise. Because you are wanting to do a good job. You're wanting to make sure that this goes as great as it possibly can. Guess what? They are too. You all have the same goal, and they're going to be supportive with you, and they're going to help you get to that goal. So I know from firsthand experience way back when, in your head, you could potentially, if you're this kind of person, and I am, so I have to work on this, you almost make them out to be the bad guy before you even get to that scenario. Because I don't know if it makes you feel better in your head, or you think it makes you feel better. It doesn't. But you're like, oh, they want me to fail. Oh, it's like, no. They're with you. They're for you. They are not against you.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Another quick question here. Somebody, Shoji, is curious what headphones you're using.
Yes. So it is the Sennheiser HD 650s, I believe is what it is. Yeah, I love these. These are open back. You have the DT 770s on your head, right?
Actually, these are the DT, very close, DT 700 Pro.
Okay. Which
newer ones.
do they go? Oh, it's the newer ones. Okay. Yeah, which those are great microphones. Those are great headphones as well. Those are like incredible. Both of mine, his fantastic headphones. However, I will say, if you're doing this for voiceover, it looks like yours is closed back, right, Curtis?
It is closed back. Yep.
That is what you would want to get. You would not want to get open back headphones for voiceover work, unless you were to be like, oh, I'm going to get these for when I'm editing. Sure. If you don't have monitors, speakers in your room, and you want a like really accurate pair of headphones, open back's the way to go. There you go. Yeah. But if you're recording, you don't want to go the open back road, because there's the chance that you could have a feedback loop, or they could potentially hear a just very quick slight echo of what you're saying into the mic coming back out of your headphones into the mic. And so open back's not the way to go if you're doing live directed sessions. But yeah, these are the Sennheiser 650 HDs. And I love them. They're my go-to for editing, for critical editing and things like that. But yeah, if you're getting headphones for voice acting, I would definitely get the ones that Curtis has, because not only are they like clouds on your head and your ears, they're so comfortable, but they're also closed back, which is what you want. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time, but I do want to just kind of drop this idea here. Would love a chat solely about acoustical treatments and methods. So
yes.
James, I don't know if you're game, but we might.
I am so game.
Okay. We may have you come back another time and talk a little bit more about that.
Sounds great to
All
me.
right.
This has
All
been
right.
so much fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today, James, taking time out of your schedule. I know you had to kind of rush back from the church work.
From the live stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks
Thank
so
you so
much for
much,
that.
by the way, for
Appreciate that.
working with me through that.
The pleasure is
Yeah.
absolutely mine. All right, everybody, get out there, make some great sound this week, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Well, here we go.